Okay, for this week, we are going to focus on percentages, starting with converting fractions to percentage. Some of you might already have an idea of this, so I just would like you to observe closely. Suppose this is our fraction 2 fifths. Now, how do you convert fraction into percentages? Remember, percentage is per 100. So to convert a fraction to a percentage, all you have to do is to multiply 100%. Now, to do this, there are two different ways. First way is to multiply 2 fifths by 100 as if they are just simply numbers. Remember how to multiply a fraction with a number or a whole number? All you have to do is to multiply the numerator with that particular number. So we have 200 over 5%. Simplify it, thus you got 40%. That's the first way. Second way, which for me is a lot easier, is instead of multiplying 2 by, or the numerator by 100, sometimes it gives you a very big number. And take note, when you simplify, later on, you have to divide that big number with the denominator. Just like 200 divided by 5 gives you 40. So why not, instead of multiplying, why not we divide first if it's divisible? Or why not we simplify first if it can be simplified? And whatever the result, then we multiply it to the numerator. Because when we divide or when we simplify, the number here becomes smaller, becomes lesser. So it's a lot easier already to multiply it to the numerator. All right? So that's the second process. So again, we can simplify the 100 with the denominator if possible, which in this case, 100 is divisible by 5. So 100 divided by 5, that's 20, and this becomes 1. And so when we multiply, this time once we have simplified, we can multiply 20 by 2. 20 by 2 is 40 over 1. 40 over 1 is 40%. See, the answer is the same. But then the values are lesser when you multiply. Now choose which one you are comfortable with and you may follow that method. Let's have more examples. 7 over 10, remember? Just multiply 100%. First way, we can just multiply 7 by the 100 and then later we simplify it by the denominator 10, which in this case will just be 70%. Or, second method, you can divide first or you can simplify first if you wanted to. So 100, that with 10, we can actually simplify it. And that's when we multiply after. So we have 70 over 1, which will give us still 70%. See? The answers are just the same. How about 9 over 50? Same process, times 100%. So we multiply, if you want to multiply 100 by 9, first, you have 900 over 50. This is what I'm telling you. If you multiply first, sometimes you get a very big number like this, by which later on you're going to simplify with the denominator. So sometimes if the number is big, it would be difficult to simplify. Possible, but difficult. All right? So if you know the technique on how to simplify this easily, we can cancel just the 0. Each 0 you see can cancel. So you'll just have 90 over 5. When simplified, gives you 18%. Okay? So if you know the techniques, then it's not a problem. So what would be an easier way? Personally, an easier way for me is to divide first. So in this case, I can divide 100 by 50 first. Okay, by which 150 when you divide or simplify, this gives you 2. Okay, and once it's simplified, that's when you can multiply the percentage that way, the numerator, which gives us 18 over 1. See, when we divide first, the value becomes smaller, and that's the advantage. 18 over 1 is 18%. Lastly, 18 over 25. Okay, so you choose which one you would want to go for. First method, you multiply first the numerator and the 100, and then you divide. That gives us 72%. How about the other way? Other way is divide or simplify 100 by 25 first. Then this gives us, and then that's the time you multiply 4%, the simplified one, and 18. All right? And you'll get the same answer, 72%. And that's how to convert fraction into percentage. Now, before you proceed to the next part 2, you can do the worksheet on converting fractions to percentage. Let's proceed to part 2, converting decimals to percentage. So before we do that, let's try to have some practice first, some skills that you need to do for this. So if you have 12 times 3 and 12 divided by 3, question is, which of the two values would make your 12 bigger? Is it times 3 or divided by 3? I repeat, which of the two operations will make your 12 bigger? Times 3 or divided by 3? For those who said times 3, you're actually correct. When you multiply by 3, 12 is expected to become bigger. But when you divide by 3, 12 becomes smaller. In fact, 12 times 3 is 36. 12 divided by 3 is 4. So we can see multiplying by 3 makes the value bigger and makes it 36. However, dividing by 3 makes the value smaller and turns it into 4. Okay? So just put in mind that when you multiply a number by another whole number greater than 1, the value becomes bigger. But if you divide a number by another number greater than 1, then the value becomes smaller. Now let's try to apply this concept when we convert decimals into percentage. The process is the same. When you convert decimal into percentage, remember decimals can be converted into a fraction, right? So the process of converting fractions to decimals will just be, to percentages will just be the same. All you have to do is to multiply. Before we do that, by the way, let's try to have 1.23 times 10 first. So 1.23 times 10. Now, since we multiplied 10 to 1.23, remember the review, the one I had a while ago? Will this make 1.23 bigger or smaller? I am multiplying by 10. Obviously, it should be bigger. Okay? So the clue here is if you are to multiply it by a power of 10 or by 10, for example, it will just be moving the decimal. But for you not to be confused whether left or right, I don't want you to memorize, but rather to analyze. So if you move the decimal to the left, this becomes 0.123, lesser than 1. Take note, the given is greater than 1. It's 1.23. So if you move this to the left, will it make the value bigger? Of course, it won't. It will make it lesser. Take note that multiplying by 10, we expect the value to become bigger. Therefore, where should I move the decimal? Very good. It should be moved to the right. Again, multiplying by 10, we expect the value to become bigger. And the technique is just to move the decimal for multiplying by 10. Therefore, the direction should be towards the right. So that from 1.23, it becomes 12.3. Okay? So it's just analysis. If it's by 100, again, we multiply it by 100, by a number, by whole number greater than 1. So we expect the value to become a lot bigger. So if you are confused where to move the decimal to, you can actually move it to the left. But by moving it to the left, you might have noticed that the value becomes smaller instead of bigger. Therefore, the direction should be to the right. And since we now have two zeros, we move it 2 times also. 1, 2. Therefore, 1.23 times 100 is just 123. Okay? So whenever you're confused whether to move the decimal to the left or right, just put in mind that when we multiply by a number greater than 1, the value should be bigger. And that gives an idea of where to move the decimal. But if we are dividing it by a number greater than 1, the value should be smaller. So it should be moved on the other direction, towards the left. So this one, 37.916. Will this make 37 bigger or smaller? Bigger. Very good. And how many zeros? 1 0. So we just move the decimal to the right. Because moving it to the left makes it 3.7 lesser. So we want to make it bigger because it's multiplied by 10. So this now becomes 379.16. All right. How about this one? Times 100. Bigger. So move the decimal to the right 2 steps. 87.56. How about this one? We expect it to be bigger. Move it to the right 2 steps. 234.56. Now you might be wondering, why are we doing that? It's because, as what I said a while ago, when we convert decimals into percentages, we just have to multiply it by 100%, similar to fractions. So since we multiply it by 100%, we expect this to be bigger. And the easy method is just to move the decimal. To which direction again to make it bigger? To the right. So 2 places, because we have 2 zeros here, therefore this becomes 37%. As easy as that. All right? More examples. So if this is a decimal, to convert into a percentage times 100%, again, we just have to move the decimal place to the right, 1, 2. And if you try to look at it moving it to the right 2 places, there is an empty space here. Then we can just put a number here, 0. We can just put a 0. Every empty space we put a 0. Therefore, the decimal now is here after 0. So 1.2 times 100% is 120%. 0.6. Converting it to percentage times 100%. Can you guess what the value is? It's 60%. Lastly, 12.68 times 100%. So we're converting it to a percentage. So this will just be 2 places to the right, 1268%. And that's the end of part 2. So please pause this video and try to do the second worksheet.